Hello everyone, semi-retired Bob here. I went from this to this in just a little under 7 months. Stick around to find out how. Good morning everybody, semi-retired Bob here. I talk about the carnivore diet, all things related to the carnivore diet, and some miscellaneous odds and ends. Today is Saturday. Of course, you're watching this on Sunday. It's still a little cool out here. In fact, now that I'm starting to walk, we'll see how quick I get warmed up. I might have to go put on a little bit more jacket, because it's chilly out here. Or maybe I'll just go throw on my upper body base layer. That seems like a good plan. But for those of you, this is your first time tuning in, welcome. I'm glad you're here. What you've stumbled upon is where I show people that it's not too late to change your health. Just a little over 7 months ago, I could barely stand for 2.5 minutes. And now, I'm out here walking miles a day. Today I'm just going to do laps around the parking lot. I made the mistake, I went out to the park last Saturday, and the first half of the video went really, really well. But by the time I got to the end, there were way too many people on the trails to conveniently film everything I wanted to film. So I'm going to go back to my original plan and just spend Saturday and Sundays walking around the church parking lot. I have people who wanted to know what I eat every day, so I have not yet eaten today. It's only about 11 o'clock in the morning. Probably won't eat till 4 or 5 this evening. But yesterday I had a 2.5 pound London broil. It was really, really good. Of course, I didn't do anything special, because I do have a pot I can boil some stuff up in, but I basically just use my skillet and I put a couple tablespoons of butter down the bottom, got that melted, and then let it cook in the skillet full of butter, about 4 minutes aside on medium heat. And then as most of that butter was soaking in, I went ahead and turned up the heat to high and did it another couple of minutes on each side to get it nice and seared on the outside. Then I took another 3-4 tablespoons of butter and melted that over the top of it. Let it sit there on my cutting board for about maybe 5 minutes is all. And then I tore it up. It was really, really good. It was a little on the chewier side because London broil is not a great cut of meat, but it wasn't terrible. I mean, it tasted very good. And it was certainly not the toughest piece of meat I'd ever had. It was sort of like the consistency of a slightly overcooked steak. It wasn't bad in that regards. But yeah, even with that sun peeking through, I'm still a little chilly. So instead of going around the field, I'm going to have to turn back up the parking lot here, step into the trailer, and put on another layer underneath this, because I am a little bit chilly. And I don't think warming up from walking is going to make that enough better that I'll be able to keep going. So I'll be back with you in just a second. With the magic of editing, it'll be like I was never gone. And just like that, I am back. Had to have a little bit of a break there. The sun came out just a little bit. Got my base layer put on. And then I saw that Amazon was 10 stops away, so I waited for them to get here. Because sometimes the delivery drivers get confused out here when they pull into a church and it looks like there's nobody here because my truck and trailer are parked around back. So if I catch them while they're on their way here on a weekend, I try to sit out front where they can see me, so that if they're just going to drive by because they think everything's closed, they'll see somebody sitting out and they'll pull in. I try to make it as easy as possible for them since I am way out here in the middle of nowhere. But today we are going to talk about diabetes. I know it's either an unpopular or popular topic, depending on which way you look at it. But before we get into that, I want to say something about the video that I put out a couple of days ago about cholesterol. Yes, our genes do get it wrong sometimes because there are many genetic disorders out there that people can have. But in most cases, long before you become metabolically unhealthy, in the group that I'm talking to primarily, 50, 60, 70-year-olds, if you make it to 50 and don't have a genetic disorder because your genes were wrong when you were born, it's very unlikely you're going to develop one. And those are the people I'm talking to. Yes, there are genetic disorders out there, but taken in the context of who I'm talking to and what I'm talking about, when it comes to the metabolically unhealthy 50, 60, 70-year-olds, a few younger ones, but for the most part, the older crowd. Sorry, Pastor just got back from visiting. He goes out every Saturday and visits with the bus kids. Finds out who's coming tomorrow, who's not, that kind of stuff. But, yeah, what was I saying? Oh, yeah. You know, there are genetic disorders, and your genes can get it wrong. But those are mostly picked up at birth or at a younger age, before you get metabolically unhealthy. So, you know, I don't know if it was someone trying to make a point, or if they were being intentionally disingenuous, or whatever it was. Yes, our genes do get it wrong. But talking about what I was talking about with cholesterol, with people who are metabolically unhealthy and switch to a proper human diet and start to get well, whether it be diabetes or fatty liver or chronic kidney disease or out of control fat or gout or whatever the situation may be. That's the vein that I was speaking in when I said, do you really believe your genes are going to get this one thing wrong. I heard another interesting quote, and I can never pronounce his name right. There's a cardiologist out there. I think it's Jadip Ali is how you say it. But he has a saying that says, when you're looking at cholesterol, what are you really looking at? Is it the arsonist trying to burn down your house? Or is it the fireman trying to save you? In this case, he believes that cholesterol is the fireman that's trying to save you from yourself, because it's used in everything. Hang on just a second, I'm out to the dumpster with the box that came in from Amazon today. Had to go into the dumpster. Now I can get down to some walking. But yeah, cholesterol is not the demon that people are making it out to be. Is there a possibility that an increased LDL cholesterol is bad for you? That possibility does exist. However, if before, when you were taking those chemical storms inside your bodies called statins to slightly lower your cholesterol, and the studies, that they've done that supposedly show how great they are for you, you cannot refute the facts that while the relative adjustment to your cholesterol might be 50% in chances to reduce poor outcomes, the statistical actual risk, the margin is 0.5 to 1.0. So you're talking about a lifetime of statins and all those side effects for a 0.5 improvement possibility of not having a bad or poor outcome. Which, if you equate that into real terms, you take a statin for 30 years, suffer through all those side effects, and on average it'll give you an extra 8 days of life. That's all I was talking about. But anyway, let's talk about diabetes. What is it? Well, the actual definition of diabetes is elevated blood sugar. Now, there's a lot of other definitions that people come up with, but at its core, diabetes is inappropriately elevated blood sugar. And we all know, or we should all know by now, that elevated blood sugar causes all kinds of problems. Now, one of the things it does is called glycation. And the test, the hemoglobin A1C test, I just found this out. I don't remember when this was. It might have been a Dr. Berry video. the video I watched sometime last week. They were talking about how the A1C test is actually done and what it checks for. It checks for glycation in your red blood cells. But here's the part that a lot of people don't know. It checks for glycation in your red blood cells caused by glucose. If you have glycation in any other parts of your body, whether it be caused by fructose or sucrose or multidextrose or any of those other things that are sugar, that's wrong. Glucose and fructose. It does not check for glycation damage from fructose. So, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, remember, I'm not a scientist, I don't play one on TV, I'm not a doctor, I'm just an old retired truck driver trying to apply common sense to a lot of the things we're seeing on the interwebs today. And while it's quite true that fructose, which is primarily what you get from fruit and honey, does not glycate cells in such a way that it affects your A1C, and because blood sugar analysis is actually a glucose meter, that's why you don't see a spike in glucose when you eat fructose, because that's not what that test is checking for. That does not mean that fructose is a good idea. In moderation, I believe that you can probably have some fruit and honey, provided you don't have other reactions to it. But don't think that just because your liver only has, your liver can only deal with just so much fructose at a time. So don't believe for an instant that just because you eat, let's just say a pineapple. That's a really big chunk. We'll say a couple of chunks of pineapple. Just because it doesn't make your glucose meter go way up, and after doing that for 3 or 6 months, your A1C is still holding, don't think for an instant that you are not causing damage to other parts of your body that we do not have tests for. If you're pouring a bunch of fructose into your system. So that's one thing you need to think about with diabetes. But it's basically just elevated blood sugar. And the very best way to reduce your diabetes effect, stop the damage, drop your fasting glucose down, drop your non-fasting glucose down, reduce your A1C with the eventual goal of reducing the amount of insulin that your body has to produce to counteract the glucose in your bloodstream, so that you're back to a normal, healthy insulin response. The very best way to do that, regardless of what some of the non-gurus out there are going to tell you, is just stop dumping carbs down your throat. Yes, there are many cells in our body that need glucose to survive, and they need glucose to thrive. How do we get it then, Bob, if we're not eating some carbs? Well, that's why the magic of the human body has a thing called gluconeogenesis. That's a really big fancy word that basically means, in layman's non-scientific terms, it can take fatty acids in your system that you've gotten from eating proteins and fats and make all the glucose you need. In fact, it's better this way, because as your body senses that, well, this cell over here needs a little bit of glucose, it'll manufacture it and send it out. So there's no need to dump carbohydrates into your system. Don't believe the lie that sugar is brain food. Sugar is poison to your system. You don't need it. Or to quote, well, I don't want to say quote, because if I get the wording just a little bit wrong, I get in trouble. But to repeat what Professor K has said on multiple occasions. The exact requirement of the human body for exogenous glucose, which means sugar that you're eating, is not 1 gram ever. Now, I know a lot of you are getting mad at me right now because you're doing keto and you do have some carbs in a day. I'm not getting down on you for that. If that's your diet plan and it's working for you, that's great. But if you are a diabetic trying to control your blood sugars, get your glucose reading down, which is just a lab number, and get your A1C down, which is also just a lab number, the real thing you're looking for here is to stop the horrible effects on the body that diabetes, even if they're just calling it pre-diabetes, if you have even a little bit of extra glucose in your bloodstream, it is doing damage to those tiny vessels that are in your eyes, in your fingers, in your toes, in your organs, not just your eyes, but your heart and your lungs and your kidneys and liver and all those organs have the little tiny blood vessels that feed them their supply. And you're doing, it may not be very much, but over time, this is where the real danger of diabetes happens. You know, you could go along, 15, 20, 25 years as diabetic and have no seriously awful side effects. But once the dam breaks, so to speak, let's think of it, as I know this analogy because there's been a couple in recent memory, some dam failures in Nebraska due to that heavy flooding they had a couple of springs ago. It starts off with just a little crack. Just a tiny, tiny little bit of damage. And then, all at once, when the dam gives way, all that water comes rushing through. Or in this case, all the damage done from diabetes. You might go along fine for a number of years with no real noticeable side effects. And then all of a sudden you're like, man, I think I'm losing feeling in my toes. Or I don't think I see quite as good as I used to. Now the storm's about to come rolling down on you. It doesn't take very long to get from that stage to you start losing body parts. So if your doctor says to you, well, you just got a little touch of pre-diabetes, take it very seriously. And for now, stop eating carbs. Stop eating all carbs. Even that little bit you're having on Ketovore or keto. Get as close to zero as you can get until you get your blood sugar down and your insulin response is back to normal. Then if you want to be, a keto or a Ketovore person with your regular diet, that's the diet you think you can sustain for long term, then by all means, have at it, because those 10 or 20 or 25 carbs a day aren't really going to cause you a big problem if you've already corrected your diabetes and you have a normal insulin response. Well, Bob, I've been doing pretty good. My doctor's had me on metformin for a decade now, and it keeps it mostly under control. I was in the same boat with you. I thought metformin was a wonder drug. And of all the other drugs that are out there, I do agree that it is less bad than some of the other ones. But to think that it's good for you or doesn't cause any harm is foolishness. Anytime we alter the way the body works with chemicals, we're bound to muck something up. And I have since discovered, I don't even remember who I was watching, metformin. We all know Professor K talks about the Randle cycle a lot, and how when a cell is replete with energy, whether it's sugar or fat, when a cell says, oh, I've got enough, the Randle cycle locks the door of that cell and doesn't let any more energy in, so that any more fuel in, so that the cell doesn't become overpopulated with sugar or even overpopulated with fat. Neither are good. But as I understand, and I remember I'm not a scientist, I don't play one on TV, but in the simple truck driver terms of how metformin works, it's designed to get the sugar in your blood out of your bloodstream. How does it do that? Well, it forces those locked doors open and literally pushes, literally is a bad word, but it pushes more sugar out of the bloodstream into those cells. Now, Like I said, I'm just a truck driver, a retired truck driver at that. But it seems to me that if the body has a mechanism for making sure extra sugar doesn't get into our cells and cause damage to them, what's happening when we take this seemingly harmless drug? We take it and then it forces more sugar into those cells that had previously been locked. So don't think, well, my A1Cs have been okay since I started taking metformin, so I'm going to keep on having my couple slices of toast with breakfast and a roll with dinner, and then a little piece of something for dessert. Stop it. Stop it now. And just stop dumping carbs down your neck. Once you get, like I said, once you get to where you're metabolically healthy again, where you don't get these great big huge spikes in your blood sugar, and it doesn't take literally a bucket of insulin to keep those spikes from happening, then by all means, have a few carbs. Once your body can react normally to the carbs, then go ahead and have some. I'm not against carbs. Everybody that has watched this channel for more than a minute knows that I am not dogmatic about anything. If you find something that works for you, just keep on doing it. As long as you're getting results. If you get to the point where you're no longer getting results, then you may want to look at what you're doing and perhaps change some things. But I'll show you some of my laughs where I'm not talking to you. I'll have some more thoughts for you at the end of the video. But right now, I need to go back inside the trailer. And it finally warmed up another 6 or 7 degrees, so I need to shed this other layer I put back on because I'm starting to sweat. But for now, let's cue the music. Okay, cut the music. Thank you. One of the things I forgot to mention in the earlier part of the video, if you have type 1 diabetes, you still don't want to be dumping carbs down your throat, but you need to be in close contact with your doctor, because very rapidly, as your sugar levels and insulin levels come back down to closer to normal, you're going to have to reduce how much insulin you're putting in your body. So something like that needs to be very carefully monitored by a diabetic-friendly, keto-friendly doctor. See, I don't recommend type 1 diabetics do this without the help of a healthcare professional. But for all you type 2s out there, just stop dumping carbs down your throat. Just stop it. And if you're saying to yourself, Bob, I just don't think I can give up my toast in the morning and my pie for dessert with dinner. I love those things. Well, do you love your eyesight and your feet more than that or less than that? That's a real question you have to ask yourself. But that's all I've got for today, folks. Don't forget to get out there, be 1% better. Have a great day. I will see you tomorrow.